Do not move into a 55 plus community if you can't handle these 9 problems. While the idea of retiring to an active adult community may seem idyllic, in reality, it could turn out to be more of a nightmare than a dream.
Dreams? Those were nightmares.
Now, this might not be what you want to hear or what you're eager to hear, but I'm committed to giving you the honest lowdown. Now, hit the thumbs up if you're ready to uncover the hidden truths behind 55 plus communities and learn how to sidestep potential traps that can not only be expensive, but also time consuming and ultimately lead to heartbreak and financial woes. Now make sure you're watching each point of this video. Missing any of these can definitely come back to haunt you. My goal is for you to come away from this video making a well-informed and successful move to the right 55 plus community here in Arizona or wherever in the country that works for you. All right, so let's dive right in. I get loads of calls, emails about planning for retirement and moving here to Arizona to a special 55 plus community. It's something we really enjoy taking on, me and my team. But here's the thing. We're seeing more and more folks who've moved to 55 plus communities and they're not too happy about their choice. At first, I just thought it was like one-off situations, but we're hearing the same kind of stories a lot more now. It seems like what were just a few isolated cases has now come into something much, much bigger. And after hearing the same sort of stories from different people, I just had to talk about it. So it turns out what's really happening in these communities is different from what most of us think. Now, some of these points may be more important to you than others. Once again, make sure you stick around to the end for what I think is the biggest problem. So I'm going to give you guys 9 things that I've seen. So starting with number 9, going in descending order, do you want your grandkids to visit? Do you want other people's grandkids to visit? How many days are they allowed to stay? Can your 21-year-old son live with you? How about your 40-year-old son that you need to take care of? What if you have pets? What if you have many pets? What if you have to park a vehicle on the street overnight? Or what if you want to work on your car in the driveway? What if you're a gearhead? I think you get the point. There are a lot of communities that have rules which are more strict than others. So it's important that you guys, step number 1, you review the CC&Rs. That's the covenants, conditions, and restrictions. A lot of people depend on their realtor or the salesperson at the community to give them the full scope, and they don't even look at this because it's usually 200 pages long. Now, if you do look at this, it's categorized by topic. There's like a table of contents, so you can skim through this. Make sure there's nothing preventing you and your family or whoever you're moving with to live life to your fullest. Now, one story I heard is a resident had come there with their grandson. They came to stay isolated. It was during COVID. The parents of this 13-year-old were doctors, and they worked with high-risk patients who were COVID patients during the pandemic. So his school was online. He was super quiet, never left the house in this 55 plus community or the backyard, but some nosy neighbors reported the kid anyways. Now these grandparents were so frustrated, so they decided to sell, and they ended up picking the rudest buyer that offered them the right price. Now, friends from the community reported regularly how miserable their former neighbors were. So that's just one example of something that you need to look at to make sure that if you have some younger kids staying with you, that you're covered, right? Let's move on to the next one. Number 8, be ready to shell out some cash for special assessments if the HOA doesn't have cash reserves. Now, what you want to do is you want to check the financials, you want to check the cash reserves, or if the HOA has asked their community members for extra cash or extra assessments in the past few years. This is going on big time in Florida right now because HOAs kept kicking the bucket down the road for future homeowners to deal with, and now their condo infrastructure in a lot of these buildings is literally crumbling. So in order to deal with this, they're creating special assessments to cover their past mistakes. It's also important to note that if there's any pending litigation against the HOA. Now, residents in one 55-plus Florida neighborhood were awarded $35 million in 2021 when an appraiser overvalued bonds that were sold by the developer by like 300%. Now, each homeowner ended up getting their money back, but they were overpaying HOA fees every month for something that was overvalued. It's always important to look at pending litigation within your community. Which leads us to number 7. Now, have you ever heard of HOA fees decreasing in a community? With the cost of inflation, cost of goods and services on the rise, we've seen HOAs rising at a rate that's higher than any time in the past. Now, just remember, there's no cap on HOA fees. They can and will continue to rise in the future. So make sure you're budgeted for these increases. My HOA here has gone up from $98 per month to $116. Now, using simple math, we can see that's roughly a 16% increase from 2020 to 2023. Now, if you live in an HOA, comment below. Let me know how much your HOAs have gone up since you've lived in your community. Now, in all honesty, I personally don't mind paying HOA dues. It's better than, higher taxes going to some politicians like in most states. And this money is definitely going to go to things in your community like landscape, infrastructure, the community facilities that everybody's using. But just keep in mind, they are promised just like death and taxes. HOA fees, death, taxes. Probably some other things I'm not thinking of. On to number 6, keeping on the point of HOA fees. Some in Arizona can be as high as $600 per month. If you're living in a condo, even crazier fees. Some of you have to purchase golf club memberships, and those HOA fees, a lot of the time, will help maintain the golf course. You're paying all this money for pools, events, keeping the facilities in sparkling good condition. But what if you're not into golf? What if your home has a pool? What if you buy a pool after you move in and you stop using the pool? What if your interest in all the community facilities just disappears? Well, consider it a gym membership that you can never get out of.
I want to quit the gym.
Because even if you don't use these facilities, it's still a monthly fee that your trainer is going to keep debiting from your account every single month. You can't stop paying just because you stop using. Now, number 5, these communities often promote an image of universal friendship and happiness. However, the reality can be quite different. Some retirees are finding themselves in a social environment that reminds them of being back in high school. If your high school is anything like mine, you have jocks, you have bullies. Wasn't me. You have mean girls. Definitely wasn't me. I wasn't a mean girl. You have many more superficial cliques that hang out together. Believe it or not, at this age, there are still things like peer pressure and the pressure to conform to certain beliefs or ideas that influence you to fit in. And keep in mind, the smaller the community, the more of this you will find. Ladies and gentlemen, if you find that you're getting some value from this video, please consider subscribing. You'll get notified every time we put out future videos. I have a ton of content coming at you, including a video next week on a brand new 55 plus community, which is coming to the Valley in Arizona. Let's move on to number 4. So brochures, like I said before, show only the smiling faces. But we can see that living in a 55 plus community doesn't guarantee a perfect social life. Along with the social scenes you may want to avoid, there can be disappointing neighbors or dynamics with neighbors. With age, obviously comes not only wisdom, but a lot of free time. And free time doesn't always lead to happiness. Now, what I've learned from a recent Facebook post in our 55 plus group on Facebook, which you can enter down in the description below, is that around 30% of people in 55 plus HOA communities have a neighbor that they try to avoid. This can be because they're creepy, they're rude, they're obnoxious, negative, or they're just always pissed off. Now, some people think they're just going to wave a magic wand, they're going to move into a 55 community, and it's going to be just like the brochures and the website show, but they soon realize that they are just as unhappy as when they lived outside of a 55 plus community. You'd think money and retirement would brighten their spirits, but there are just some people in this world that really do not want to be happy. Trust me, I'm related to a few of them. Some younger, some older, I'll be honest. Now, being a sour grape or a pickle puss just isn't going to work in a close-knit community. On to number 3, and I think this is the most hilarious, so pardon. I've heard of a situation in a certain neighborhood where residents may place a gnome outside of their home, and it means that they're open to swinging. And no, I'm not talking about swinging at the park with your friends. I'm talking about sharing partners. Okay, if you don't know what sharing partners is, I'm talking about wife swapping, partner swapping. I hope you get it by now. These are just some rumors that surround 55 plus communities. Now, I can make a whole video on what stereotypes come with living in 55 plus communities. Some people say there's rampant STDs in these communities, and others say that men outnumber the women 3-1. I mean, that one's not crazy, but the other ones are. Now, personally, I don't know the truth to any of these rumors, but it definitely leads me to suspect that there's a whole lot of gossip going on within these communities. Now, number 2, we all know it's 5 o'clock somewhere. New residents are quickly ready to pave the way for fun, partying, drinking, socializing, but the burnout is real. Residents will quickly find out that partying every day gets pretty old pretty quickly. Temptations in a 55 plus communities are real to fall off the wagon. Most of these communities have bars right next to the pool, and it's easy to have one drink lead to another, and before you know it, you're taking off all your clothes and skinny dipping in front of everybody. And you're doing this on a regular basis. Now, I'm not saying it's bad to have a drink every now and then, just make sure it's balanced with exercise and positive life decisions. Now, number one, I think as of late, this is the biggest concern. Communities are a mix of people coming from all over with different political views. This is definitely a problem in Arizona where there's been people moving from all over the country. A lot of people come from California, Portland, Seattle. They bring their politics with them. That's what everybody says. Others come from more red areas, and of course, they bring their politics too. Combine this with alcohol and other factors, and it's almost a bomb waiting to explode. Now, if you guys want to try one of these communities, if you want to stay in a community before you purchase there, check out this video right here where I explore the different communities in Arizona that offer stay and play options.